my wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff.
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight.
Yes, everybody is scared about Rwanda. Everybody is not right about this. Everybody say that. That's not right.
I visit an illegal migrant camp. They are scared of Rwanda
And you didn't like France? France is no good?
Yeah, ما حبيت فرنسا.
أنا كمان نكتة here. I don't know. Like فرنسا, أول فرنسا good.
Find out what happened when this man's claim was rejected. Plus,
myth to be debunked was that mass migration was an unalloyed good for the economy. And in the report we've set out that really isn't the case.
Robert Jenrick busts the last myth on mass migration. Also,
MP for Dover, Natalie Elphick. Oh, off.
Labour's Shadow Chancellor told their newest MP to F off. And
10 years is a real thing. It's our birthday at Invictus Games Foundation, and we're all very excited and thrilled. And given the state of the world, there is so much more to do.
was King Charles right to snub Prince Harry? And
what is the title of the first volume of C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia to be published? Chronologically, it follows the magician's nephew. C.J. Lewis. The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe.
Find out why Monty Panesar's political career is over before it even started. Plus, I'm a witch! Eurovision's weird. On my panel tonight is the director of Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood. We've got GB News star Nana Akua and ex-Labour Minister Bill Rammell. And what do you think happens next here? Yeah, keep your eyes peeled for that one. Get ready, Britain, here we go. An exclusive with illegal migrants next.
Very good evening from the newsroom. Let's take a quick look at the stories leading the news at 9 o'clock. Conservative MP Natalie Elphick has switched to Labour, accusing Rishi Sunak of breaking promises in another blow for the Prime Minister. Some of Sir Keir Starmer's MPs aren't impressed because of her previous criticism of Labour's policies. Downing Street, though, has brushed off questions about whether Rishi Sunak's concerned, following now the second defection in under a fortnight. Dan Poulter made the same switch over the government's handling of the NHS, but Number 10's reaffirmed the Prime Minister's focused on the priorities of the British people. The Russian embassy in the UK says new measures against its officials are groundless and that the reasons given for them are ridiculous. Moscow's defence attaché is being expelled over claims he's a spy. Several Russian diplomat premises are also being shut, while there'll be new restrictions on diplomatic visas. The Home Secretary says Britain's trying to dismantle the Kremlin's intelligence-gathering operations, a move also supported by Labour. We've heard tonight that Andrew Tate is being sued for damages by 4 British women who claimed he raped and assaulted them. 3 of the women reported the social media influencer to police over allegations in 2015. But the Crown Prosecution Service investigated and decided not to prosecute 4 years later. It comes as the 37-year-old and his brother are currently in Romania waiting to stand trial on rape and trafficking charges. A representative for the brothers say they both unequivocally deny all allegations. A couple who committed serial dine and dash offences, racking up large bills for food and drink before leaving without paying, have admitted 5 joint charges of fraud today. 41-year-old Bernard McDonough and his wife Anne, who's 39, avoided bills worth nearly £1,200 during their eating sprees over a period of 8 months. The first venue they fled from in Swansea says it's delighted that justice has finally caught up with the couple after that restaurant lost nearly £300. Anne McDonough's also admitted 4 counts of shoplifting items worth more than £1,000. The pair from Port Talbot will be sentenced later this month. And some royal news. Prince Harry heard cheers as he arrived at St Paul's Cathedral in London earlier for an event marking 10 years of the Invictus Games. During the service, the Duke of Sussex gave a reading in front of representatives from participating nations and injured servicemen and women.
There are varieties of gifts, but the same spirit. And there are varieties of services, but the same Lord. And there are varieties of activities, but it is the same God who activates all of them in everyone.
Meanwhile, less than 2 miles away, the King was holding his first garden party of the season at Buckingham Palace. And we were told by a spokesman for Harry yesterday that the monarch's full programme meant that the pair won't be seeing each other during his short return to the UK. That's the latest from the newsroom for now. I'll be back with another update at 10 o'clock. Until then, you can sign up for GB News alerts. Just scan the code on the screen and go to our website, gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome along. So, it's been revealed that the Home Office has lost 21,000 illegal immigrants. Well, I know where some of them are living. So I went to visit a small encampment in West London. The amount of people here varies day to day, as do their stories. And I spoke to one Sudanese man who has had his claim for asylum rejected. He told me initially his journey to Britain.
Why did you leave France to come to Britain? Could you?
Yeah, for the first time coming Libya, coming Tunisia, Nigeria, Morocco, Italy, France.
And you didn't like France? France is no good?
Yeah, ما حبيت فرنسا.
I'm coming here, I don't know. But like France, all France are good.
It's good, yeah, it's good. But you like come here. Yeah.
He's come through Libya, Tunisia, a variety of different European countries. He said France was all right, but obviously wanted to chance his arm over here. Clearly, a lot of these people are just bumbling around Europe and then they end up in Britain. So, as I said, his claim was rejected. Here's what happened.
Where were you staying when you first came to Britain? Was it in a hotel or?
Hotel?
Hotel.
Hotel like كم قعدت?
Acton, 1 year.
1 year in the Acton.
In a hotel in Acton for a year.
1 year.
And then they said you've been rejected, and you left and lived here.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
He's telling me just go. We don't have any interview with you or something. Just go out.
So he had his claim rejected by the Home Office. He was living in a hotel, and they just told him to leave. So now he lives in a tent on a roundabout. I mean, it raises serious questions as to whether or not there is any attempt to deport people whose claims are rejected, or whether we just unleash them into the wild. I mean, it wouldn't actually be that hard to get him to leave.
He say, I want now out, back out.
You want to go?
Sleeping here good.
I sleep in my family better in the here, alone and not safe. Everyone stole me, everyone fight me, everyone. I don't feel safe here. He say I don't anymore want this country.
He wants to go home. Then there's this chap from Kuwait, and he tells me that he came to Britain and he ended up living in one of these tent camps as well.
When he tell him, give him...
Oh, the judge.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, the judge. And he's give me the paper before like 1 year now. And when he give me paper, he tell me, go out now in the British Cross, I live in the share house. He give me just 2 weeks, and he tell me, after 2 weeks, you must me go out. I say, where I go? He say, go with the council. I say, okay, I go to the council. The council tell me, patience, we have problem about the problem.
So he told me that he paid for a fake passport and he flew in from Kuwait and landed at an airport in Britain and then claimed asylum. But here's the big question. Is Rwanda a deterrent? So are illegal migrants scared of being sent to Rwanda, and will it stop them crossing the channel?
You would rather go to Sudan than Rwanda?
Sudan, me Sudanese, go Sudan. No go Rwanda. Why you go Rwanda? Rwanda my one country. What doing Rwanda?
Yeah.
Yes, everybody is scared about Rwanda. Everybody not right about this. Everybody say that. That's not right. if I come from my country, your country, why you send me another country? Another country, different language, different legend, different everything. Why?
So, yes, it is a deterrent. He says everyone is scared of Rwanda. There obviously is, you know, a sense of entitlement there, isn't there, which is that he's made it to Britain, so he should have the opportunity to stay. That second chap there from Kuwait, he says he has been granted asylum. So the other issue there is you've got people who've been rejected, who were just unleashed onto the streets, that man who was accepted, and because they don't have anywhere for them to live, surprise, surprise, he's also on the streets. This is something that many people could have seen coming a mile off. These clips do raise serious issues. Are we actually making any attempts to keep tabs on people we've rejected? I guarantee you that camps full of illegal migrants will pop up in every major UK city. That's the direction of travel, isn't it? Are we being proactive enough as well? This is the other question. The government should be going around these camps, filming it, and then showing the footage to people waiting on the other side of the channel and telling them, this is what you get if you come to Britain. A tent on a roundabout, or Rwanda. But let's get the thoughts of my panel. This evening, I am joined by the Director of Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood. I've also got GB News star Nana Akua and ex-Labour big dog, Bill Rammell. Right, look, Mark, I'll start with you on this. Yeah, some really quite serious questions there. I suppose the first one is, does it look as though the Rwanda plan is working? I mean, neither of them wanted to go.
Yeah, I mean, Patrick, useful, but at this stage, anecdotal evidence. Of course, the Labour Party criticises the Rwanda plan because it's expensive, but it's intended to be a deterrent. We spend a lot on deterrence in public policy. Our criminal justice system is based on deterrence. From what we're seeing, it will take time to actually get a data set. It is a deterrent. But I think what your interviews there show, Patrick, is that our immigration and asylum system is completely broken. I mean, all sorts of little anecdotes there that absolutely send chills down my spine. This guy was in a hotel in Acton for a year. A year. How on earth can it take the authorities that long to process a claim? Should be days, maybe a few weeks, if I'm generous. So whatever you think our asylum and immigration policy should be, and you can have a genuine philosophical argument about that, you have to be able to execute it. And at the moment, the British government and the British authorities can't.
That other guy from Kuwait, I mean, we've got more footage there, obviously, but he says he initially, when he landed here, was sent to a hotel in Liverpool, then he was sent to Chelsea, then he was sent to one in Brent Cross, and then he was accepted, but obviously there's nowhere for him to actually live, so now he's there on the roundabout. No, the concern for me is that other guy there who had his claim rejected, they just told him to just leave. And he said he's had no interaction with, no attempt to get hold of him at all.
This is just ridiculous. And actually, the Labour Party, who said that they'd get rid of Rwanda, Rwanda is a third country, and we will always need third countries. A, for people specifically who we don't know where they come from because they may have not told us, or maybe they can't go back. And B, for people like him who maybe don't want to go back to their home country but have failed asylum. So he's failed asylum, he's still here, and he is just a tiny, tiny microcosm of all of the others who have failed. And the worst thing is, for the ones who are quite savvy, they'll then do appeals, appealing again and again, which we are paying, by the way, for those legal appeals, repeatedly. And then there's a whole industry around all of that, some dodgy lawyers, some weird little charities that are keeping all of this afloat under the guise of supposedly doing something good.
Bill, look, I mean, we can pick the bones out of that, and we are doing, but one of the things is they obviously are quite intimidated by the Rwanda plan. And if Labour does remove that, I would argue that would just send an even bigger green light to people to come, no?
Well, I really don't think Rwanda is a credible deterrent. You know, it's going to take about 300 years to clear the backlog based upon the numbers that are going to be sent to Rwanda. If you've got people coming thousands of miles across the world and you've got a 0.77% chance of being sent to Rwanda, that's really not...
They're all scared of it, though.
Yep. Well, you know, it's anecdotal, a few people. You know, since Rishi Sunak... Since Rishi Sunak announced victory 2 weeks ago, there's 2,400 people who've come across in boats across the channel. But the system is a mess. You know, the Home Office, John Reid said back in, you know, the mid-2000s that the Home Office is unfit for purpose. There's no coordination, there's no tracking of migrants in terms of where they go. And the biggest lack of deterrent is that you can come here as an asylum seeker, your case will take years to process, and you can disappear into the black economy. That is not a deterrent.
I mean, we are at this rate of asylum seekers now. These things are going to keep popping up everywhere, aren't they? I mean, this is what we're going to get, which is tent cities of people, both of whom have been either accepted or rejected with nowhere to go, and no one really making any attempt to contact them.
Yeah, I mean, a point of agreement between Bill and myself. You can argue about the Rwanda plan, yes or no, but it's only a very, very small part of. Even if you think it's part of the solution, it's only part of the solution. The idea, as I say, that this guy was just discharged from a hotel. Sorry, your system's failed. I mean, you know, what's the plan to deport him? This is hopeless. Did you say in your report, Patrick, 21,000 people?
21,000.
So I'm rather with Bill. The Home Office doesn't really seem to be fit for purpose. I think it's got to be broken up into different parts.
But they're partly doing it deliberately, weren't they? I mean, I think there was one time where they were processing 9 people a week. I mean, it's absurd, and part of it was their whole sort of initiative to try and get rid of this current government. That was all part of it. So will they be any better under Labour?
Well, they were. Under the last Labour government, and I'm not saying throughout the 13... No, but hold on, I'm not saying it was perfect during 13 years of Labour government, but in about 4 or 5, we recognised we didn't have control of the system, and we dramatically reduced numbers by the time we left office.
One thing I will say about those two chaps there, OK, is that whichever way you dress this up, there has to be an element of personal responsibility, particularly the guy from Sudan. I was talking to him about all of the different countries he got through. France, he said, was basically fine. He would rather go back to Sudan than live here. I absolutely couldn't get to the bottom of exactly what he was fleeing in Sudan, where I do appreciate there are problems, but he had numerous different opportunities to tell me that on camera and didn't. The guy from Kuwait didn't make any case whatsoever for what he was actually fleeing from. You know, when you look at this now, you think there are people who, yeah, you can have sympathy towards them, but I wonder, Mark, whether or not they have to take some accountability for their own action. They have travelled right the way across Europe in the case of that guy from Sudan, and he has ended up on a roundabout in Paddington.
Yeah, listen, Patrick, I think you've hit the nail on the head here. Look, there are people fleeing desperate persecution whose lives are at risk. But we've got to take a reasoned and calm judgment about what proportion of them are amongst those actually seeking asylum. It's possible that they really are fleeing for fear of losing life and limb. But all of the rules we set up were basically set up in the wake of the Holocaust of the Jews in the Second World War. I mean, an absolutely catastrophic, diabolical event where we obviously provided safe haven. It now seems rather flimsy claims are being put forward. Now, we need to be humanitarian about this, but I think we also need to take a hard-headed view that people are gaming the system to get here, when in fact they're not fleeing persecution and their lives are at risk. A good number.
OK, well, look, I have got an interview a little bit later on with tough talking now Conservative MP Robert Jenrick, who says that uncontrolled mass migration, so this is the legal side of things, is making the UK much, much poorer.
Last myth to be debunked was that mass migration was an unalloyed good for the economy. And in the report we've set out that really isn't the case.
Plus, have Labour made a major misstep by allowing ex-Tory Natalie Elphicke into their ranks? Anne Widdecombe hits out at that very soon. But up next, should the King have made time to see Prince Harry during his visit to the UK? Journalist and broadcaster Laurie Turner goes head-to-head with former royal correspondent at the Daily Express, Richard Palmer. It's Patrick Christys tonight. We're on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Many of the people that you had invited to come and speak were people who've been elected in their own countries. I'm thinking of people like Suella Braverman. I'm thinking of Nigel Farage, who has been a member of the European Parliament, of course, had an enormous impact on British politics. And Viktor Orban, who has been elected and re-elected. Many people may not care for the Prime Minister of Hungary, but he's certainly an elected person.
And in addition, we had about 15 to 16 members of the European Parliament who were also elected, and they really live in Brussels. And you would imagine that Brussels, being the head of the capital of the EU, would allow elected members of its own parliament to have an opportunity to voice their views. So I think what was very interesting about this is that the mayors overplayed their hands, so that because they overplayed their hands, all public opinion became entirely on our side. It was so evident, so transparent, that this was really an attempt to use the police instead of arguments to react to our conference, that it was a real direct threat, and it is still a direct threat to the freedom of assembly and to free speech.
So how do you think it leaves it? Is it more likely or less likely that there'll be future bans?
I think this is a trial run. What I'm really worried about is that if the future of democracy and free speech depends on the ruling of one judge, and you have to remember that 3 other judges ruled against us, then democracy is in big trouble. What worries me absolutely is that a strong body of political opinion amongst established politicians believes that it is okay to cancel conferences and to crush the people's opinions and prevent the freedom of assembly. The democracy actually depends on these foundational values.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Coming up, Anne Widdecombe's unrivalled analysis on Natalie Elphicke's defection to the Labour Party, which is, I think, one of the most bonkers political decisions of recent times. And that really is saying something. But first, should the King have seen Prince Harry during his visit to the UK? It's time now for the head-to-head. So, King Charles served up a double blow to his son this week by not only refusing to meet him, but also making Prince William Colonel-in-Chief of Harry's old regiment. Yeah, you hate to see it, don't you? The King last met Prince Harry in February following his cancer diagnosis, but today the Duke of Sussex arrived at St Paul's Cathedral for an Invictus Games service ahead of travelling to Nigeria with Meghan Markle. Harry's spokesman said this in response to the many inquiries and continued speculation on whether or not the Duke will meet with his father while in the UK this week. It unfortunately will not be possible due to His Majesty's full programme. The Duke, of course, is understanding of his father's diary of commitments and various other priorities. That's the key bit, I think, isn't it? Various other priorities, and hopes to see him soon. So, look, tonight I am asking, should the King have to the UK? Let me know your thoughts. Head to gbnews.com/your say. Tweet me at GBNews while you're there. Make sure you vote in our poll. But first, going head-to-head on this, our former royal correspondent at the Daily Express, Richard Palmer, and journalist and broadcaster, Laurie. Laurie, I'll start with you. Do you think that King Charles should have made more time for Harry, or is he well within his rights to tell him to swivel?
No, he's absolutely within his rights. I mean, I think that it's quite elegantly done. He hasn't really hit back directly as any of the appalling things that Harry's gone on the record of saying about his family, particularly Camilla, particularly Catherine. But he's just said, unfortunately, I haven't quite got the time to see you while you're here. And I think that tells that's a megaphone in a very kind of quietly elegant way to say you're not welcome. I think the fact that Harry thinks he can just jet in, have a quick meeting with his father, and then jet out again. That's not the way you do things when your father is king.
Richard, he's been completely and utterly arrogant, hasn't he? And he's got what he deserves.
I think
we'll go to Richard. Sorry, Laurie.
Family.
We'll go to Richard. We'll go to Richard, and then I'll come back to you. Sorry, Laurie, I know you're chomping at the bit, but yes, go on, Richard.
Hi, Patrick.
Hi.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really strange scenario for me because I've been accused of all sorts of things by Harry's fans over the last few years, like most royal correspondents. But I was really surprised that the King didn't make a short amount of time available to meet Harry. And actually, I think it's probably a bit of a mistake. Not for any reasons of state or the future of the monarchy as an institution or anything like that, but just because as a family, inevitably, sooner or later, they're going to have to build bridges again and try to get on as a family. And I thought that when Harry came over in February, it looked as if that was the first step towards doing that. And certainly I was told by people close to the King that you should read. You saw pictures of him smiling, coming out to the meeting. So, I think I was certainly led to believe that the King was happy that he'd met Harry. And so I'm really puzzled what's happened between then and now.
Yeah, I mean, with respect, is it not quite obvious what's happened, Larry? I mean, Harry hasn't actually made time for his father here at all. He's come over for the anniversary of the Invictus Games. So it's completely self-serving from the want-away prince, isn't it, really? Well, and he's expecting his cancer-stricken father to fit around his plan.
Well, if you mention cancer, and I think that's very relevant. I think, nothing concentrates the mind like being diagnosed with cancer. And maybe he's taken a leaf out of Harry's Californian book and thought about, I don't need toxic influences in my life at the moment. And maybe Harry's a bit of a toxic influence. Certainly Camilla probably thinks so. He wants to keep his life simple. He needs to concentrate on getting better. And I think, I think there is his term going to be on Charles's term. That's what I would say this is about.
Yeah, it's got to be on Charles. I mean, Richard, look, if he really was that desperate to see his father, he could have flown in a week or two before. He could have gone into some kind of quarantine if he knew that his dad's immune system was down. He could have, shielded like the bad old days and then gone and met him. But he's not. He said, look, Dad, I'm here now. I've just got off a jet. I've just come from California. Come on, see me.
Well, I think his trip over here has been arranged for some time. So I think all sides could have arranged a meeting, even if it was half an hour, 8 o'clock this morning, for argument's sake, if the King had wanted to. And, I agree with Larry that the King is sending a strong message here. I mean, I don't think anybody's really buying the idea that he just doesn't have time to meet his son. He has had a very full programme of events today and yesterday, the King, but even so, there was time over breakfast, time over dinner, whatever. I suspect that part of the problem is the mixed signals all of this could be sending. Harry and Meghan are going off to Nigeria at the invitation of the Nigerian government. They're not representing the UK, they're not representing the British monarchy. And I suspect part of the problem is if there are pictures of the King meeting Harry and then Harry arrives in Nigeria saying, my father sends his regards, that is sending a very mixed message to the Nigerian government. So that could well be part of the problem.
Yeah, and I think you've hit a point there, which is a question of trust. I mean, Lowry, the last thing the King needs now is for a private conversation behind the scenes to find its way into the latest episode of a Netflix programme.
Well, exactly. I think, we're all wondering when's the next documentary going to be made, when's the next book going to be written. I mean, we were all a bit flabbergasted in Spare when he went into such incredible detail about family spats. And I think there is a certain element of trust now. How much of what is said to him will remain private if it's said by the King? So, yeah, he's got to rebuild a lot of that. I also think that trip to Nigeria is maybe the thing that's changed things, because that does look like a sort of, other royal court he's establishing. I mean, I don't think it's appropriate he should be going to Nigeria because he goes as a royal, and yet it's not an official royal visit. So I'm quite surprised he accepted, and I'm sure the palace are not happy about that one.
No, indeed. I mean, I think the double snub, really, is that Prince William is now Colonel-in-Chief of Prince Harry's old regiment, Richard. I mean, again, the timing of that is absolutely impeccable. I mean, is he not wiping Harry's nose in his own mess here?
It certainly feels like that. I think the announcement was made in August that William would become Colonel-in-Chief of this regiment, but the actual handover is happening on May the 13th. To announce it while Harry's here feels like it's humiliating Harry, really. And then there's a third snub, if you like, the fact that the royal family didn't send anybody today to St Paul's Cathedral for the Invictus ceremony. Johnny Mercer, the Minister for Veterans, was there, so the British government was represented. And, you know, I think Harry has faced a lot of justified criticism over the last few years, but he does deserve praise for the idea of setting up the Invictus Games. I think it's one of the best things, probably the best thing he's ever done. And to me, it's surprising that not a single representative of the British royal family was there today.
Yeah, indeed. Look, both of you, can I just say a massive thank you? Great stuff and good to have both sides of it. So, well done. That was, of course, Lowy Turner there, journalist and broadcaster, and Richard Palmer, the royal correspondent, former, at the Daily Express. Thank you, both of you. So who do you agree with? All right. Was the King right to snub Harry? Should he have made time for his son? Sadie on X says, it's a moment the King will never get back. OK, maybe he didn't want to get it, though, I suppose. John says, do we know that Prince Harry even wanted to see his dad? Maybe the question could equally be, should Prince Harry have made time to see the King during his visit to the UK? I agree with you. If you really wanted to see your dad, who's presumably his immune system isn't great, I am aware he's meeting people, but you would come in earlier, wouldn't you? You wouldn't just fly in and go, come on then, see me now. If he knew his father's schedule was as busy as it is, he could have worked around it, couldn't he? June says, give the King a break. He's trying to do his duty to his country while suffering with cancer. Harry has deserted it and says his home now is America. Yeah, I agree with you. Well, look, your verdict is in. 20% of you, just 20% of you, think that the King should have made time. 80% of you say he was right not to see his son. Yep, there we go. Coming up, could Robert Jenrick's no-nonsense migration plan save the Tories from electoral oblivion?
Be done immediately. The package that we've set out here could be done before the general election.
Yeah, indeed. Look, we've heard the argument, haven't we, that we're culturally enriched by record levels of mass migration, that our society has been made richer in more ways than one. Well, I think the final myth is about to be absolutely shattered right here on this show at 10 p.m. We'll be hearing from Robert Jenrick. Plus, the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID vaccine is being withdrawn worldwide after they admitted last month in court that it can cause rare side effects. Well, well, well. I'll have the full report for you in just a moment. But next, in a move that sent Westminster into a tailspin, right-wing, and can I just say very right-wing, Tory MP Natalie Elphicke has sensationally defected to Labour. So just what is she thinking? And is she now damaged goods for Keir Starmer? Anne Widdecombe won't be pulling any punches. She's next.
Hello, good evening. It's been another dry and fine day for many of us, and there'll be more in the way of sunshine to come tomorrow, and it should be a warmer day for most of us. However, cloudier skies are starting to approach the northwest as this weather front moves in. Won't make too much progress overnight further elsewhere across the country as high pressure is building in, so it should be a fairly clear and dry night for the bulk of England and Wales. Cloudier skies will affect parts of northern England, Northern Ireland, and in particular much of Scotland, where the rain will turn quite persistent across the northwest overnight. So quite a damp night to come, probably a damp start to the day. But elsewhere, it should be a bright and mild start to the day. Quite widely, temperatures will be in double digits by Thursday morning. Any mist and fog that has formed overnight should clear quite readily. It's most likely across coastal areas across England and Wales, and that will give way to another day of long-lived sunny spells, and it's going to feel warmer in that sunshine than today. And the sunshine should spread up and further north into northwestern areas of Scotland as that weather front pushes north. Highs of 22, 23, possibly 24 degrees across central areas of England on Thursday. Again, there's a risk of mist and fog to start the day on Friday. The sunshine could be a bit hazy first thing, but it should brighten up quite quickly through the day. And I think most areas will see a day of long-lived sunny spells. And once again, it's going to be feeling fairly warm. Long-lived sunshine to come on Saturday. A risk of showers on Sunday, but temperatures are climbing towards 25 or 26 degrees.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel. So Meghan's launched her new lifestyle range, starting with jams. It's called American Riviera Orchard. Apparently, it's been made from organic fruits grown in Meghan and Harry's Montecito gardens. If we can believe it, I reserve an air of scepticism. But she sent out 50 jars of this jam to influencers and celebrity friends in the hope of trying to boost some sales to her product. But it's ended up winning for King Charles because fans have gone to Highgrove website and King Charles's jam has sold out.
So hang on, why did they go?
Has gone through the roof.
Why did they go to the Highgrove website?
Well, I think it's a bit of a blow against Meghan because they're saying we don't want your jam. We're going to go and get the king. So it just shows how popular the king is. This is what she's always wanted. Her dream has been to be like this Gwyneth Paltrow style lifestyle guru. She's always loved Gwyneth's website Goop. When she set up the TIG, which was her website when she was still in Suits as a working actress, that was the brand, the style of brand that she was going for, was this Gwyneth style, New York elite, very princessy. So this is her chance now by trying to cash in on her royal title because she is now a duchess, so she's using that to try and elevate her brand. And she's really now trying to carve out herself as this new Martha Stewart.
And she's coming out with a cooking show as well on Netflix. She's coming out with a cooking show. And she's, I mean, to be fair to Meghan, she has always tried to say that she's into healthy eating, organic food, cooking. But I don't see this being a success. It just will not happen for her because she's just burnt too many bridges. People just don't believe in her brand. They don't think she's authentic. So, are you an actress? Are you a guru? Are you a duchess? Are you a philanthropist? Who are you, Meghan?
Who actually are you? This is what we're asking. I don't think anyone knows. I don't think Meghan really knows who she is.
Welcome back to Pantry Christys. Tonight, coming up, Oxford AstraZeneca COVID vaccine, well, it's being withdrawn worldwide. We will take a look at the ramifications and we're also going to revisit some of the things that were said about this vaccine at the time. But first, Sir Keir Starmer just couldn't wait to let the cat out of the bag at Prime Minister's Questions this afternoon, introducing the new Labour MP for Blackpool South after last week's by-election, but also another surprise addition to the opposition.
Can I also warmly welcome the new Labour MP for Dover to these benches? Mr. Speaker, if 1 week a Tory MP who's also a doctor says the Prime Minister can't be trusted with the NHS and joins Labour, and the next week the Tory MP for Dover, on the front line of the small boats crisis, says the Prime Minister cannot be trusted with our borders and joins Labour, what is the point of this failed government staggering on?
What's the point of her going to Labour? Yeah, that's right. So Tory MP, well, former, Natalie Elphicke defected to Labour this afternoon, hitting out at what she called Rishi Sunak's tired and chaotic government. But is this really the victory that Starmer's making it out to be? Steve Baker wrote today, I have been searching in vain for a Conservative MP who thinks themselves to the right of Natalie Elphicke. One just quipped, I didn't realise there was any room to her right. And up until a matter of hours ago, she was no fan of Starmer or his Labour Party, previously accusing them of not wanting to stop the small boats and siding with the criminal people smuggling gangs. And when her husband, Charlie Elphicke, the previous MP for Dover, was jailed in 2021 for sexually assaulting 2 women, Natalie leapt to his defence, claiming that he'd been punished for being attractive. I mean, it begs the question, doesn't it? Why didn't Starmer just copy his shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves when Elphicke came running over to defect?
MP for Dover, Natalie Elphicke, when Rashford missed a penalty, her tweet was, if we spent more time on football rather than trying to get free school meals for our kids, maybe it'd be better. Off.
Yeah. She sat next to Starmer today, Rachel Reeves, with Natalie Elphicke behind her, the woman she told to F off, and she was cheering that she's just joined the Labour benches. Mad. I'm joined now by former Conservative Minister Anne Widdecombe. Anne, is this a catastrophic misstep for Labour, do you think?
It's absolutely ludicrous. If you actually look at the expressions in that clip that you showed of Rachel Reeves and Angela Rayner, they don't exactly look ecstatic. They've got very, very fixed expressions and smiles. And it is very surprising. But this is exactly what started to happen in 1997 when the Tories were looking at a major defeat and probably being out of office for quite a few years, not just one parliament. And I can think of at least 4 Conservative MPs who defected, 2 to Labour, 2 to the Lib Dems, during that time. And of course, if you go back even further, when Labour was about to be out of office for a long time, you had people like Reg Prentice, name probably forgotten now, crossing the floor. So it isn't unusual. And what this is saying is that Natalie Elphicke and anybody else who does what she has done is simply recognising that the Tories have no future and she's hedging her bets.
Yeah, but she's leaving anyway. This is the thing. So she's not going to stand for Labour at the next general election in that seat. So why didn't she just suck it up for a few months? Unless, of course, she's going to shamelessly go into the Lord.
I'm going to say there is an upper house. And, you know, of those 4 MPs that I mentioned who defected when Tony Blair was about to get his massive majority, you know, at least 3 of them, the 4th didn't, but 3 of them ended up in the upper house. And, you know, so it could well be about that.
I just find it absolutely astonishing. I mean, the Labour Party aren't happy with it. She's been tweeting some unbelievable stuff about Labour, literally until, like, a few days ago, where, you know, saying that they haven't got a plan, that this is awful. She is to the right of the Conservative Party as well. Do you honestly, is the only thing that you can think this is about her potentially getting in the House of Lords, a kind of jobs for the girls situation?
I can't say that because I don't know. I don't know what the discussions have been. What I do know is that she is not naturally, you know, a person of the left. She wouldn't be attracted to a party other than the Conservatives. I'm not really certain what it is about. I mean, yes, I get that the Conservatives have failed and they haven't, you know, delivered on the votes, etc. But nor is Starmer going to do that. So what exactly has she gone across for? I don't know.
Well, we're going to just hear from her quickly, Anne, right? She's defending a decision, I believe, here. So let's hear her out.
In 2019, the Conservatives stood on a manifesto that was very much centre ground. But under Rishi Sunak, they've abandoned the centre ground and broken many election promises. Meanwhile, under Keir Starmer, Labour have changed. And I think that change is going to bring a much better future for our country. And that's why I was so keen to join the Labour Party and play my part in bringing that important future forward.
Absolute load of rubbish, Anne.
Well, I mean, it's just unbelievable stuff. I mean, yes, the Conservative Party were on the centre ground, but she's always been right. So, you know, what's all that about? She's always been well to the right of centre, as far as I recall, at any rate. So I don't get that. And as for saying that Keir Starmer, you know, Labour's changed under Keir Starmer, I mean, this is a man who shouted the merits of Jeremy Corbyn. What is she doing?
Yeah, she's the only Labour member of the ERG now as well, which is quite funny, actually. That European research group there, staunchly pro-Brexit, all of that stuff. Yeah, completely. Is there a whiff of the Green Party about this, Anne, that, you know, the Greens were so desperate to get council seats that they accepted some complete lunatics and fruitcakes in? I'm not calling Natalie Elphicke a lunatic and a fruitcake, but what I am saying is the Labour Party are just welcoming anyone in. Now, they'd probably let you in. What do you think they should let Farage in? That'd be the final one, wouldn't it?
Well, I don't think you'll find either of us applying.
No, but they'd take anyone, wouldn't they? I mean, this is bizarre.
There is that, you know, that anything that embarrasses the Tories is a good thing for Labour. So, you know, from that point of view, yes. But it is an extraordinary defection. I mean, it really is. I mean, you know, she has just been so consistently to the right of the Tory party. I just can't understand this.
No, it really does not seem to make any sense. And can I also just say as well, absolute, complete and utter disrespect. So whatever has gone on behind the scenes, I mean, Robert Jenrick, we're going to be hearing from him a bit later on, former immigration minister, you know, incredibly peed off with Rishi Sunak and the direction of travel in the Tory party, is now putting himself forward, trying to put a Conservative message out there. He's going to do that at 10 p.m. You know, he's not defecting to Labour, and to just do it at Prime Minister's Questions time, it does raise serious questions about the moral fibre of this woman.
Well, yes, but it also raises questions about the moral fibre of the Conservative Party. They've done nothing except get rid of since 2019, get rid of their leaders, criticise their leaders, threaten their leaders, always going to write letters, etc. This is actually the modern Conservative Party, and this is almost now normal behaviour.
Well, it's completely farcical, isn't it? And I wonder with Labour, if they're trying to say that by welcoming Natalie Elphicke in, they're a broad church. I mean, she's not a church. She's a Hindu temple by comparison to whatever the Labour Party broad church is. This is curtains for Starmer winning back the left, though, isn't it? I mean, how good, Owen Jones, he left. He's not coming back now. Natalie Elphicke's there, is he?
Well, I think probably an awful lot of people in the Labour Party tonight and in the Labour Parliamentary Party are choking on this and don't like it. But on the other hand, it's one in the eye for the Conservatives. That's what the thinking is.
Yeah, absolutely bonkers. And thank you very much, Anne Widdecombe there. Coming up, Robert Jenrick is about to take it to woke Whitehall over mass immigration.
Really important because winning this argument enables us to take the actions that's actually necessary to cut migration.
I've got some astonishing data for you that just blows the lid off anyone. I tell you what, tune in at 10 and then show it to any of your mates who still think that mass immigration is a good thing. But he's also pretty scathing about Natalie Elphicke. Yeah, I'll play you that clip shortly. But next, the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID vaccine is being withdrawn worldwide after they admitted in court that it can cause rare side effects. They say it's for commercial reasons. But will we be hearing more from TV doctors like this?
The data shows that there's no causal link, no evidence at all that these blood clots are related to the vaccination.
Don't let them forget that, because they had a massive impact at the time of the pandemic. Our full report will be next. Stay tuned.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now, a woman who 25 years ago, at the age of just 14, tortured and killed her 71-year-old grandmother was last month released from prison on licence.
But this isn't the first time she's been let out. Sarah Davey has been bailed and re-incarcerated no less than 7 times.
Well, to debate this, we're joined by former Detective Chief Inspector Colin Sutton, famed for catching the notorious killer of Millie Dowler, Levi Belfield, and GB News' own Patrick Christys.
I think we have to qualify that where the killer is a child, and we have to accept that to consign somebody to be in prison for 60, 70 or 80 years is probably something that we ought to think twice about. So I understand why this happens. I understand the outrage. I really understand the outrage. I think that 14-year-olds who kill should be given a chance to rehabilitate? Yes, I do. Do I think that somebody who's had 7 such chances and blown them away deserves an 8th chance? Then probably I think that's a lot more doubtful.
I would have thought that by chance, sort of 3 or 4, they'd have got the picture, but clearly not. Patrick, what do you make of it all?
Well, some people are born evil, aren't they? And why should we have to suffer to have them back out on the streets? There are some crimes that are so serious that you should pay for it either with your life or for the rest of your life. This was a sadistic murder, the details of which absolutely cannot be read out on air at this particular time of day. There are 3 issues here. Is this justice for the families of victims? I just think a release like this is a slap in the face, really, to us all. It's another example of soft justice. And just because she's a child, well, she was old enough to commit the heinous crime she committed. GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight on GB News. Coming up, ex-minister Robert Jenrick tells me why mass migration is making us all poorer. But before that, it was once heralded by Boris Johnson as a triumph of British science and has been credited with saving more than 6 million lives. But now the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID vaccine is being withdrawn worldwide after the pharmaceutical giant claimed the jab had been superseded by alternatives and therefore wasn't commercially viable. The decision comes just months after the company admitted that the vaccine can cause a rare and dangerous side effect which causes blood clots and low blood count. And AstraZeneca is currently being sued by more than 50 alleged victims and grieving relatives in a High Court case. But ITV's Dr. Hilary Jones, he lectured the nation day in, day out with misinformation like this.
All the clinical trials, the European Medicines Agency, our own MHRA, the WHO, 17 million people who've been vaccinated in Europe and in the UK. All the data shows that there's no causal link, no evidence at all that these blood clots are related to the vaccination.
Wonder how many jabs he had? Oh, yes, and who could forget this morning's Dr. Sarah Kayat.
Well, what's really excellent is, and it's a statistic that I think should be shouted from the rooftops, is that after 12 days from the first vaccination of the AstraZeneca vaccine, you are 100% effective against hospitalisation and death.
That wasn't the dodgiest thing about that clip, was it? I'm joined now by the Emeritus Professor of Bacteriology at Aberdeen University. It's Professor Hugh Pennington. Professor Hugh, thank you very, very much. Do you think that people who were absolutely shouting from the rooftops about the completely unimpeded benefits of this COVID vaccine should hang their heads in shame now?
Well, I don't think they ever said that it was, you know, absolutely 100% safe or absolutely 100% protective, because we've known from the start that getting immunity against coronaviruses as a family, and COVID is a member of that family, is tricky. You know, the immunity is not 100% after you've had an infection, which is usually the best way of getting yourself immunity, and it's not 100% after having any of the vaccines, all much of a muchness, the ones we've used in the UK. And also, no medical product is without some degree of risk. I think the problem here with the AstraZeneca one is that there was a very rare complication which could cause very serious brain damage, for example.
But we weren't allowed to... Sorry to interrupt, Professor Hugh. Sorry to interrupt, Professor Hugh, but that's the vital bit. We weren't really allowed to talk about that, were we? If you did talk about it, you were demonised. You wouldn't get a place on national television, really. You weren't. You ran all sorts of risks, really, for even posing a question like you've said there. You know, any vaccine comes with risks and side effects. Trying to talk about the risk or the side effects of the COVID vaccine was like a prison sentence.
Well, we know that the public has a rather sceptical view about things said about products like vaccines. And not everybody, most people actually accept them. They think it's a good thing. But there's a substantial minority who get very worried, some rightly so, and some conspiracy theorists, all that kind of thing. And so those people who are talking about vaccines and talking about them with knowledge have to be very careful how they pick their words so that they don't scare people off who need the vaccine. Because let's face it, the vast majority of people who've had this vaccine have had a degree of protection. Well, everybody who's had the vaccine had a degree of protection, and it stops, basically, it's 70% protection against being sent to hospital, and it's 90% protection against being killed by the virus. That's the AstraZeneca vaccine. So it's worth having, particularly if you're in a risk group, And let's face it, a good portion of the population is a risk group. Anybody over 60, for example, and the older you are, the more likely you are to have a fatal infection. And that's why they've focused the vaccine on these elderly folks.
To someone like me, though, OK, or loads of people who were right in the middle of this pandemic where there was fear everywhere. I mean, I can remember one day I was on a different radio station and I was talking about, all of a sudden on the front page, there's the Nepalese variant. That turned out not to exist. So we had a load of that stuff doing the rounds. And you also had these, you know, a conveyor belt of TV doctors coming out going, go on, get the jab. Get the jab. Go on, get the jab. Get the jab. It's absolutely safe. Everything's absolutely safe. People have had to go to court now. People have lost their lives. And people will not be able... No amount of money is going to bring someone back from the dead, is it? And I don't think that was made clear enough at the time, that albeit incredibly rare, but it was still a thing, and they're only finally admitting it at the same time as they've decided to pull it worldwide.
Well, the AstraZeneca vaccine has been very successful, and it saved many, multiple times of a number of lives than those who've suffered any complications from it. And, you know, the balance is an enormous balance in favour of the vaccine. But as I said, one has to be very careful when it's talking about side effects, even if they're very, very rare, because then they get magnified as a reason for not having the vaccine. And there are some people who don't like having vaccines. They don't like having injections, for example. And of course, probably the AstraZeneca, you have to compare it with other vaccines which don't have this particular complication. They leave you with a sore arm, perhaps. They work in a different way. They're made in a different way. And they're also part of the scientific triumph that we had vaccines coming along very early, far earlier than we would have expected under the sort of traditional way that we make vaccines. And that's because there was a lot of science going on behind the scenes. And the Oxford people had 10 years of experience of making this kind of vaccine.
All right. Professor Hugh, thank you very much. That's Professor Hugh Pennington there. The mea culpas are coming in thick and fast, by the way. You've already had Susanna Reid saying, oh, I think we did actually harm the kids a little bit with various things they would locked down. Anyway, right, OK, so we've got a right of reply here from AstraZeneca. From the body of evidence in clinical trials and real-world data, the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine has continuously been shown to have an acceptable safety profile, and regulators around the world consistently state that the benefits of vaccination outweigh the risks of extremely rare potential side effects. Right, coming up, former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick. He lets rip on the Tory-turned-Labour MP Natalie Elphicke.
An idiotic decision. She's joined a party which stands for everything that she despises.
And he sounds the alarm on just how much damage the migrant crisis, by the way, legal migration, is doing to the British worker, OK? It's Patrick Christys tonight. I'll see you in a sec.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. It's been another dry and fine day for many of us, and there'll be more in the way of sunshine to come tomorrow, and it should be a warmer day for most of us. However, cloudier skies are starting to approach the northwest as this weather front moves in. Won't make too much progress overnight further elsewhere across the country as high pressure is building in, so it should be a fairly clear and dry night for the bulk of England and Wales. Cloudier skies will affect parts of northern England, Northern Ireland, and in particular much of Scotland, where the rain will turn quite persistent across the northwest overnight. So quite a damp night to come, probably a damp start to the day. But elsewhere, it should be a bright and mild start to the day. Quite widely, temperatures will be in double digits by Thursday morning. Any mist and fog that has formed overnight should clear quite readily. It's most likely across coastal areas across England and Wales, and that will give way to another day of long-lived sunny spells, and it's going to feel warmer in that sunshine than today. And the sunshine should spread up and further north into northwestern areas of Scotland as that weather front pushes north. Highs of 22, 23, possibly 24 degrees across central areas of England on Thursday. Again, there's a risk of mist and fog to start the day on Friday. The sunshine could be a bit hazy first thing, but it should brighten up quite quickly through the day. And I think most areas will see a day of long-lived sunny spells. And once again, it's going to be feeling fairly warm. Long-lived sunshine to come on Saturday. A risk of showers on Sunday, but temperatures are climbing towards 25 or 26 degrees.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox, and I won the Great British Giveaway. I'd say, why not? What is it? The price of a text and £2 to enter. And if I can win it, anybody can win it. And they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
last myth to be debunked was that mass migration was an unalloyed good for the economy. And in the report we've set out that that really isn't the case.
the last myth about mass immigration gets busted, and
an idiotic decision. She's joined a party which stands for everything that she despises.
Everyone's laughing at Labour, plus
I'm a witch!
Eurovision is weirder than ever. And
what is the title of the first volume of C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia to be published? Chronologically, it follows The Magician's Nephew. C.J. Lewis. The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe.
Monty Panesar's political career ends before it started. I've got tomorrow's newspapers tonight, and on my panel it is the director of Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood. We've got GB News star Nana Acquia and ex-Labour Minister Bill Rammell. Oh yes, and look, what happens next here? Watch very closely. Watch very closely. Well, I'll reveal all in a matter of seconds. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Show this to the mass migration fanatics. Next.
Good evening from the newsroom, 10 o'clock, and a reminder of the top stories tonight. Labour's candidate for Dover has given his response to Conservative MP Natalie Elfique defecting to his party today. Former soldier Mike Tapp reassured voters she won't be replacing him and that he looks forward to Natalie's support at the next general election. Well, the Dover MP announced her decision just 2 minutes before Prime Minister's questions this afternoon, saying that Rishi Sunak's government is chaotic and claimed that Labour has changed. Speaking shortly after defecting, Miss Elfique said a Labour government promises a brighter future.
In 2019, the Conservatives stood on a manifesto that was very much centre ground. But under Rishi Sunak, they've abandoned the centre ground and broken many election promises. Meanwhile, under Keir Starmer, Labour have changed. And I think that change is going to bring a much better future for our country. And that's why I was so keen to join the Labour Party and play my part in bringing that important future forward.
In other news today, banking group TSB says it will close 36 branches and cut 250 jobs across the business as more customers are opting for online banking. Most of the lost positions will be in the bank's fraud department, central operations and in high street branches. It comes as about 96% of transactions now take place outside of a branch, while in-store transactions have fallen by 43% over the past 4 years. A father whose teenage daughter took her own life after watching harmful content on social media says that a draft plan to protect children online doesn't go far enough. The media regulator Ofcom says platforms must take action to stop their algorithms recommending harmful content to children or face significant fines. But Ian Russell, part of Bereaved Families for Online Safety, says he wants to see safety codes strengthened to make sure that the world's biggest online platforms can better protect children online. Officials have said there is no sign of malicious cyber activity in the problems that caused long queues at UK airports overnight. The technical issue meant that Border Force e-gates weren't working at several sites, including Heathrow, Gatwick, Manchester and in Edinburgh. Minister for Legal Migration, Tom Purglove, has been discussing the technical issue in the House of Commons and apologised for the disruption. And finally, just some breaking news that we're hearing coming to us out of South Yorkshire tonight, where 2 people have now been arrested. Hundreds also evacuated from around 130 properties after a bomb squad was dispatched to the village in Barnsley. Shocked villagers in Grimsthorpe have reported seeing an explosives truck and a bomb disposal robot in the area. It's understood the focus of police operations is a disused church and adjoining house in the area after a number of suspicious items were found. Detectives on the scene suggesting residents could remain evacuated for another 48 hours. Roads also closed within a 60-metre cordon, and they're asking members of the public to avoid the area for at least the next 72 hours. That's the latest from the newsroom for now. Another update at 11 o'clock. Until then, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by going to gbnews.com/alerts.
One by one, the myths about mass legal immigration are being shattered. It turns out large-scale migration has not delivered significant growth in GDP per capita and has increased the strain on our capital stock, from roads and GP surgeries to housing. Net migration accounts for around 89% of the 1.34 million increase in England's housing deficit in the last 10 years. Migrants from the Middle East, North Africa and Turkey, aged 25 to 64, are almost twice as likely to be economically inactive as someone born in the UK. This is according to a new report from the Centre for Policy Studies. A signatory of this report is former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick, who joined me earlier. In the studio by former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick. Robert, thank you very much for joining us today. Has the myth that mass immigration is good for our economy now been shattered?
Well, I hope so, and that's what we set out to do in the report that we published today. The arguments around the social and cultural impact of mass migration are well rehearsed, as is the democratic one, that we have all been voting for 30 years for governments promising to control and reduce migration that only went on to do the opposite. But the last myth to be debunked was that mass migration was an unalloyed good for the economy. And in the report we've set out that really isn't the case. And in fact, if it had been the case, then 25 years of mass migration would have left the UK an even richer country. And that is not what's happened. In fact, it's had a lot of damaging consequences on productivity, which has flatlined in recent years, on wages, which have been undercut by foreign labour, on the housing market, where the sheer numbers of people coming in have made it much more difficult for people to get on the housing ladder or to rent in big cities like London. And this is really important because winning this argument enables us to take the actions that's actually necessary to cut migration and get back to the kind of historic norms that we want to see.
So are you now trying to make the case that mass immigration of this scale makes us all poorer?
Absolutely. The sheer numbers of people coming in have placed massive pressure on public services like housing, access to GPs and doctors. That costs money to the Exchequer, and also the types of people that have been coming in have often been, in fact, invariably been low-wage, low-skilled individuals who do not make a net contribution to the taxpayers here in the UK.
OK, now, you have published a 30-point plan. We won't go into all of them, for obvious reasons. One of these points, I believe, is to split the Home Office into two. Could you explain that for us?
Yeah, so I think the time has come to break up the Home Office. This is an organisation which just isn't working. You can see that day in, day out with stories of failures and incompetence. And I think part of that is the structure and the culture of the Home Office. So what I'm proposing is that we break it in two, that we have a department that handles national security and policing, and then we create an entirely new department for border security and immigration control. And there we try to create and instill a new culture which is not focused on mopping up the consequences, but is about tackling the root causes of illegal migration, and where we are really focused on having the most robust and fair immigration system in the world.
Can you just emphasise to me then what the culture is like now? I mean, you've just been inside the Home Office. So what's wrong with the culture at the moment?
Well, I'd say there are two issues. One is that it's far too focused on the consequences, the symptoms of the problem, rather than on tackling them and fixing the problem in the first place. And resources are mismatched. Too much money is going on hotels for illegal migrants, too little on stopping the boats in the first place and tackling the issue upstream. And then secondly, the system is far too focused on managing issues like how we support migrants rather than on getting in and having a really robust
so we're too
culture.
Kind at the moment, you think?
Well, I think we all want to see a compassionate and fair system, but we also want to see one that is robust and ultimately puts border security up front. I also just think that this is one of the most important issues for the public. You know, the public routinely say this is the number one or two issue facing the country right now, and therefore it is right that it has its own government department with a minister in cabinet directly accountable for what's going on.
OK, a couple of other points I believe that you want to put across in this report are reducing the numbers of people coming on health and social care visas and some student visas as well. The argument against that would be, well, who is going to look after us if we're all in care homes, and our universities are going to fold?
Well, look, there's trade-offs in whatever you do, but if you want to reduce the number of people coming here, then you've got to tackle some of the big drivers of immigration that we've seen in recent years. One of those is students, and what we're proposing is simply to go back to the position as it was 2 or 3 years ago when students came here, and if they wanted to stay on post-study, they had to get a graduate-level job, which means a job which is paying the right kind of salary. In the last couple of years, what we've seen is a massive proliferation in students coming, paying £5,000 for a short course, often bringing their partner and dependents with them, and that really just being a backdoor to immigration and life in the UK. Some of those people go on to be Deliveroo drivers, you know, a far cry from the kind of graduate-level jobs that it was envisaged.
You must have been saying all of this at the time. When you were Immigration Minister, surely you must have been saying all of this at the time. And a lot of people think now the social contract's been broken, it's always have left it too late, and Rishi Sunak is not the man for the job anymore. So what was the response when you were saying this stuff?
Well, it wasn't good enough. I mean, that's one of the reasons why ultimately I resigned from Cabinet, because I wasn't able to persuade the Prime Minister and the government to go as far as I wanted to reduce the numbers. We did manage to secure a significant package at the end of last year, which will reduce numbers by about 300,000 a year. But to me, that was a beginning. It wasn't an end point. What I hope we can do now with this set of very comprehensive recommendations is persuade the government to take action. This could be done immediately. The package that we've set out here could be done before the general election.
Right, in part 2 of that interview, I have a very important update for you on something that I know that a lot of our viewers and listeners really care about, which is this desire to try to get governments going forward to publish the data and the details on the amount of people with pending visa restrictions and asylum applications who have committed crime in Britain. So, yeah, big update coming your way. But I'm just going to reintroduce my panel for you now. Director of Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood, GB News presenter, Nana Akua, and former Labour Minister, Bill Rammell. Bill, So, at the expense of our housing, vast swathes of our culture, our NHS waiting lists and our school places, amongst other things, we have thrown the doors open to this country and we have got precious little per capita to show for it.
It's had a huge impact. And, I mean, Robert Jenrick has been part of the government for the last 14 years that's completely lost control of the immigration system. Net migration at 745,000 is far too high and is unsustainable, and that needs to be tackled. But some of Jenrick's proposals, I mean, he's going to take on the universities where, you know, it's one of our biggest global export success stories, worth about £12 billion a year to the UK economy. If you look at the polling evidence, people don't see international students as migrants because they know they put into the country, and 97% of them go back once they complete their visas. Even more shocking is what he's saying about the social care sector. A limit of 30,000 visas when last year there were 150,000 in the social care sector. To propose cutting those numbers by 4/5 without any credible plan about how you're going to replace that workforce, you know, our care homes couldn't function without migrants. It's irresponsible and reckless. And frankly, it's not serious politics. It's a pitch to the Tory party members for the leadership election that's going to take place after the election.
OK, now, Mark, some people might look at that and go, well, you know, that is the economic argument for mass migration at this level just shattered. We're you know, one of, I would argue, maybe the trade-off or record levels of net migration is that, well, it makes us all richer. And now this report is saying, well, it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think what Robert Jenrick said is rather mild-mannered. I mean, he's just said in your interview with him, Patrick, that mass migration is not an unalloyed benefit. Migration can be beneficial. We're not going to decide that the population of the UK today is the absolute optimal amount forevermore. Growing populations can generate economic growth. It depends on quantum and type. And I'm rather with Bill, 700,000 people a year is difficult for any infrastructure to soak up, just at that rapid pace. But it also depends on the type of people that are coming in. You could imagine if we got it to, I don't know, 100,000 a year, let's say, there'd be a big difference whether these people were high earners, highly productive, net contributors to the economy, or whether they were all people who weren't really part of the labour force and claiming welfare. And this is the statistic, Patrick, that I've used on your programme before. It is an oversimplification. But on average, if you spread the entire cost of government between all of the people in this country, it's £14,000 per person per year. Obviously, young people and old people cost a bit more, people in their 30s and 40s a bit less. But on average, that's the cost of government in this country. So if you are contributing less than 14 grand a year in tax, or 28 grand if you're with your spouse, or 56 grand if you're with your spouse and 2 kids, you are a net drain on the public purse. Those are the basic raw facts of it.
And Nana, I wonder if this goes down as one of the biggest betrayals in British history. It was post-Brexit. You know, people had voted to take back control of their borders, and we decided to throw those borders open to a lot of people from a lot of places like this, the Middle East, North Africa and Turkey, aged between 25 and 64, and it turns out they're almost twice as likely to be economically inactive as someone born in the UK, significantly less economically active as people from America, from France and from Spain.
And ironically, we've sort of exchanged EU migrants for migrants from all across the world, which should have been a good thing in a sense, that everybody has an equal footing to get into this country. But unfortunately, even the migration, the legal stuff that we had control of, we just were drunk on this low-skilled, cheap labour, which is what people, everything he described about what's happening now is what was happening within the EU when we were a part of the EU. So we're literally, I mean, what you said, Bill, about, oh, you know, we need all these workers and so on. Again, it's like this drunk on cheap labour instead of investing more within our own country and paying for the people within this country. So, yeah, I think it's a massive betrayal of the British public because they had control of the borders and everything, and they did not use that. And actually, I'm glad that Robert Jenrick is talking now, but he is part of that party that allowed this to happen, and there's no getting around it. They allowed this to happen.
And it is a betrayal, and there's a massive irony here. When we were within the European Union, whatever you said about the East European migrants, who were the predominant component of people coming to this country, they were damned hard-working and they put into the economy. The people who've replaced them after Brexit, as the Tories have let the numbers rip, are not like that.
Absolutely. And when people were voting to take back control, I'm absolutely not going to speak for everybody here at all. I will speak for myself, though. Yes, I did want to see the overall number of migration come down. Never in a million years did I think that the kind of people that we would be throwing our borders over to... If you look at this now, Canada, Singapore and Australia, migrants from there, apparently pay between 4 and 9 times as much in income tax as migrants from Somalia or Pakistan. Right? So never in a million years, I don't think, did anyone who went and crossed that box to vote leave, right, on that day, think, well, what we're going to do is we're going to throw the borders open to Somalia and Pakistan.
Yeah, I mean, it's an intriguing point here. I mean, I think that obviously the whole slogan of the Brexit campaign was take back control. Theoretically, you could be in favour of taking back control even if you wanted a very liberal immigration policy. The point was that the UK government didn't control immigration policy. But the Conservatives have not put in place a coherent immigration policy. I'll be fascinated to hear from Bill what the Labour Party's sort of plans would be. Why would things be different, not just managerially, but in policy terms? But I don't think that most people who voted for Brexit, and many people who voted for Remain, assumed that the consequence would be these sort of net numbers.
What you've got to do is invest in our workforce. You've got to properly train and educate people. You've got to pay decent wages so that British workers will take some of these jobs that are currently being done for. Well,
we've got a lot of idle people out of the workforce.
We're going to have to put a pin in it, but we will be returning very, very quickly because, yes, I will be bringing you all of tomorrow's front pages. But part 2 of this sit-down interview with Robert Jenrick. Now, in it, he updates GB News viewers and listeners on our mission to find out which countries asylum seeker criminals are arriving from and how many of them there are. And the strong words for new Labour MP, Natalie Elphicke.
Idiotic decision. She's joined a party which stands for everything that she despises.
Jenrick Unleashed, next.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News. The
People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
The International Monetary Fund has estimated that Russia will outgrow all advanced economies in 2024. This is in spite of all the sanctions the West has imposed on Russia, in spite of its removal of the SWIFT banking system, in spite of the fact that Germany has almost entirely weaned itself off Russian gas, and in spite of the 50,000 soldiers who have died and the endless resources it has poured into the Ukraine war. So, what are we missing here? Why is Russia going to grow more than the rest of us? Well, it's simple. Russia is willing to make use of its own energy resources to provide abundant supply to its citizens. Increased supply means lower prices, and cheap energy is inextricably linked to economic growth. But since 2008, the United States has grown at twice the rate of the United Kingdom. The big difference is that America has much lower energy prices, while the UK insists on masochistic green policies. But it's no surprise that the Green fanatics in the Scottish government, where they know how to be fanatics, have had to backtrack on their flagship greenhouse gas reduction target. The SNP has committed to reducing Scotland's CO2 emissions by 75% by 2030. Now, the Climate Change Committee has reviewed its policy and advised that the absurd reduction target is out of reach.
Can we accept the CCC's recent re-articulation that this Parliament's interim 2030 target is out of reach? We must now act to chart a course to 2045.
It is time to recognise the truth that net zero by 2050 is unrealistic and unaffordable. It's time we rid ourselves of this foolish and costly idea that will simply make people cold and poor. We need to prioritise cheap energy for Britain's consumers and for companies, for industry, enabling economic growth that will benefit us all.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. It's time now for part 2 of my interview with former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick. Look, I wanted to give you all an update on where he was up to with getting the law changed so that governments have to publish data on how many migrants have committed crimes in Britain, and also get his reaction to that shock defection of Natalie Elphicke to the Labour Party. When you sat on this sofa, we were talking about migrant asylum seekers / people with pending visa applications and the crime stats and how difficult it was to get a hold of that. As you know, we've been trying to do our best here at GB News to get some of that information. It's not forthcoming. I believe that you were looking to get a change in the law. I know our viewers and listeners will be keen to know where you're up to with that.
Well, GB News has been fantastic at supporting our campaign. It's Judgment Day coming up next week because the amendment that I have put to the Criminal Justice Bill will come before the House of Commons, and I hope that the government will see sense and will support that amendment, and that would mean that they are then obligated in law to publish on an annual basis those stats. And we can then all see what the impact of migration is on crime and sentencing in this country. And that's just one way in which we can have a more rational and transparent debate about the true consequences of migration.
So that's one to watch for next week then, isn't it? I've got to ask you, Natalie Elphicke, that was a bit of a shock to a lot of people. I also think quite a shock to a lot of people in the Labour Party as well, that the MP for Dover and Deal has decided to switch to Labour, despite saying she will also stand down at the next election anyway. I believe that does make her the first Labour member of the ERG. What do you make of Natalie Elphicke's shock switch to the Labour Party?
I think it's an idiotic decision. She's joined a party which stands for everything that she despises. I can't tell you the number of times I have had conversations with her, and she has attacked the Labour Party for their open doors approach, the fact that Keir Starmer has stood for free movement, has campaigned in the past to prevent foreign national offenders being sent back to their home countries. It's a betrayal, frankly, of the people that she represents in Dover and Deal, who are on the front line of our immigration crisis.
Is it not, however, all of that may well be true, right? But is it also not quite embarrassing for Rishi Sunak? Because he's confronted with this at PMQs, and you've got Natalie Elphicke switching now on, she says, because of broken promises on borders and broken promises on immigration. So whilst you might have gone about things differently, I suppose there is a point of agreement between you and her there. I mean, is it not embarrassing for the Prime Minister to answer this way that we need a general election now?
Well, Natalie's joined a party that will do precisely the opposite of what she's campaigned on throughout her time in Parliament. What I want the Prime Minister to do is something very different, which is to strengthen our borders, not open them up as Keir Starmer would do. I want to ensure that the Rwanda policy actually works. And as you know, I feel that we've opted for a weak version of that. But today, I'm giving the Prime Minister a set of recommendations which would enable him to begin to restore trust in our legal migration system. That template is there for him. I hope that he will use the precious time that we've got now in office before the general election, and that will help to persuade some of those people who, for example, are voting reform or who are unsure whether to support us, that the party really cares about this central issue.
OK, so next week is going to be a big week. I believe we get some net migration figures out as well next week, I think, but also there on that Robert Jenrick's amendment to the law to try and make sure that we can find out how many asylum seekers, etc., have committed crimes, what kind of crimes they are. I think that's important to answer the discussion, isn't it? But, Nana, I will start with you. I'm going to start with Natalie Elphicke, actually, because, I mean, he called it an idiotic decision. He said that she's joined a party that will do the exact opposite of everything she stands for. I think that's right, isn't it?
Well, it is. I mean, she's like a member of the ERG. She's super right-wing. In fact, there was that joke, that tweet that went out from Steve Baker that you'd be hard-pushed to even find somebody who's more right-wing than her in the Tory party. So, and why would you want her anyway? She defended her ex-husband who was, you know, done for being a sexual predator. I mean, it's just a bit... Why would that be? And then even when she's joined the party and crossed the floor, she's not going to stand, she says.
Yeah.
I mean, this is all about attention grabbing. She wants to... Maybe she needs to be relevant. I think she's worried about losing her job, obviously, because the Labour Party are likely to be the next leaders of this country. And I think she's also trying to get a peerage or something, being pushed up to the House of Lords. This is all about her. This has nothing to do with anything else.
Bill, I mean, at this point, would Keir Starmer take Nigel Farage, do you think? He's just taking anyone, isn't he?
No, I don't think so. But let me just say I was surprised by this. You know, in the run to 97, several Tory MPs defected to the Labour Party, all on the left of the Tory party. It's been similar this time. She's an outlier in that respect, but I guess you don't look a gift horse in the mouth. And actually, to give her due, it may be she's been on a journey, because I completely disagreed with Robert Jenrick when he said, why she joined Labour, they're in favour of open borders. No, we're not in favour of open borders. And when we were in government, net immigration was a third of what it is today. We didn't spout off about it. We actually got the job done, and that's what's been lacking.
All right, go on.
Oh, I mean, look, everybody's been speculating for the last week or two after Dan Poulter, the little-known Dan Poulter, defected to Labour, who was going to be next. To have been a fly on the wall in the Conservative Whip's office. I bet they've got a list of 10, 12 Tory MPs who are sort of, you know, a bit wobbly, might defect to Labour. She would have been nowhere near that list. Of the 350 Tory MPs, I reckon she would have been behind Rishi Sunak as likely to defect to the Labour Party. Absolutely extraordinary. The Conservatives would not have seen this coming. I don't think Labour saw it coming either. And I understand what Bill's saying. You know, his party's on the up, well ahead in the opinion polls. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. But I would say the Labour Party didn't quite get their PR right. The stunt at PMQs, well, that's fair banter. That's what politics is about. But there have been a good number of moderate voices in the Labour Party who were questioning this. Neil Kinnock, right, not obviously associated with the hard left of the Labour Party, sort of saying, what the hell's going on here? And I don't really think that the Labour Party machine got its PR quite right on this one. What really is her reason for defecting?
It's weird.
Nobody has explained it.
But that PR, that may be true, but it's indicative again of the way the Tory party is just crumbling before our eyes. And, you know, we're going to stagger on through another 6 months of this?
Well,
it's crazy.
Well, they're just rats leaving a sinking ship, sorry, excuse me.
Oh, don't worry.
Sadly.
Those two words are interchangeable at this point, I think. Yeah, it's all right. First of all, no, but yeah, it is bizarre. I mean, it is completely bizarre. You said she's gone on a journey. I mean, that's a bloody big journey, that, Bill.
She's been on a journey very quickly as well. The last few hours, 3 days. Very, very quick journey.
I'm not sure I buy that. Anyway, right, guys. All right, lovely stuff. Now, coming up, reports that illegal migrants are fleeing the UK to Ireland over fears they'll be deported. Is Rwanda plan working already? Yes, OK. We're also going to be discussing the very first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages, all right? And my panel are not going anywhere. Stick around for expert analysis, fiery debate and a few laughs as well. See you in a sec.
Hello, good evening. It's been another dry and fine day for many of us, and there'll be more in the way of sunshine to come tomorrow, and it should be a warmer day for most of us. However, cloudier skies are starting to approach the northwest as this weather front moves in. Won't make too much progress overnight further elsewhere across the country as high pressure is building in, so it should be a fairly clear and dry night for the bulk of England and Wales. Cloudier skies will affect parts of northern England, Northern Ireland and in particular much of Scotland, where the rain will turn quite persistent across the northwest overnight. So quite a damp night to come, probably a damp start to the day. But elsewhere, it should be a bright and mild start to the day. Quite widely, temperatures will be in double digits by Thursday morning. Any mist and fog that has formed overnight should clear quite readily. It's most likely across coastal areas across England and Wales, and that will give way to another day of long-lived sunny spells, and it's going to feel warmer in that sunshine than today. And the sunshine should spread up and further north into northwestern areas of Scotland as that weather front pushes north. Highs of 22, 23, possibly 24 degrees across central areas of England on Thursday. Again, there's a risk of mist and fog to start the day on Friday. The sunshine could be a bit hazy first thing, but it should brighten up quite quickly through the day. And I think most areas will see a day of long-lived sunny spells. And once again, it's going to be feeling fairly warm. Long-lived sunshine to come on Saturday, a risk of showers on Sunday, but temperatures are climbing towards 25 or 26 degrees.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's Newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nigel Farage, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's time to bring you tomorrow's news tonight now with the very first of the front pages. And we start with the Metro. Here's to you, Opal. Baby born deaf cured in a UK world first. So, a girl born completely deaf can now hear after having world-leading gene therapy in a trial in an NHS hospital. Oh, this is fantastic. She's only 18 months old, bless her, diagnosed with a very rare condition. It's caused by the disruption of the nerves. Anyway, so now she can hear again. Good. Wow. Modern science, eh? Right, let's go to The Guardian. Scientists despair amid forecast of at least 2.5 degrees temperature rise. They're despairing, these scientists. They're absolutely despairing. It's a poll that shows that climate experts expect catastrophic heating. We've heard that before, haven't we? Hundreds of the world's leading climate scientists expect that global temperatures will rise by at least 2.5 degrees above the pre-industrial levels this century. Right. So let's go to the eye. Interest rates cut can't save Sunak amid defection row. So the Bank of England is expected to hold the interest rate at 5.25% today. This obviously is the headline for tomorrow, with cuts unlikely until autumn, as a pollster warns that any drop is now too late to actually have any kind of meaningful impact. Let's go to The Independent. Another Tory MP defects as Sunak is ambushed at PMQs. This now iconic and also, let's be honest, very weird shot of Natalie Elphicke sat on the Labour benches next to a load of people who obviously hate her. Rishi, and they do, you can just see in the picture. Rishi Sunak was rocked. Yeah, look, we've done the story. Let's go to The National. Why not, eh? Labour, OK, the Tories' word there is crossed out with Labour above it and values. They've gone off on the old Natalie Elphicke story. They're saying being suspended from the Commons for trying to influence a judge in her ex-husband's sexual assault trial, backing Boris Johnson and Truss, supporting Israel's bombardment of Gaza, attacking trade unions, scaremongering about vulnerable asylum seekers and blaming Marcus Rashford missing a penalty on free school meals. I mean, it is actually quite a comprehensive list of the reasons why she shouldn't really be in the Labour Party, but there you go. The Daily Mail. Labour willing to pander to sectarianism after dozens of pro-Gaza candidates elected in the local elections. Tory chairman accuses Starmer of embracing a threat to democracy. And we're going to start with the Mail. Mark, do you think that Keir Starmer, in trying to say that he wants to win back these people, some of these Green Party nutters, yeah, I said it, that he's actually really embracing, well, kind of extremism or sectarianism?
Well, look, he mustn't. I really hope he doesn't. I hold no torch for the Labour Party or for Keir Starmer. I think it's astonishing what's happened to the Green Party, which I hadn't associated with shrieks of Allahu Akbar and the rest of it.
No.
But the Muslim vote has been a big part of the Labour Party coalition, and because of the concentration in votes, it makes a big difference in a good number of constituencies. I think Wes Streetings being one of them, perhaps. But I think Keir Starmer has got to adopt a very, very careful line here. If he starts to get Muslim extremists back into the Labour Party or even pandering to them in any way, we are all the way back to the ghastly anti-Semitic problem we had under Jeremy Corbyn. So I appreciate this is a party political attack by the chairman of my party, the Conservative Party. We'll see what Keir Starmer does. He might take the view that he's far enough ahead in the opinion polls that he doesn't need to do anything, and I hope that he sticks to a moderate course of action.
Yeah, Bill, as a former Labour minister, I mean, firstly, it must be said that Richard Holden is quite lucky to still have a job, actually, after the local election results. Not entirely his fault, but, we are where we are there. But, I mean, he has got a point. I mean, as far as you're concerned, as a Labour voter, I mean, these nutters are now... They've left you. Good, right? Why win them back?
I don't get this story, and frankly, it smacks to me of typical Daily Mail nonsense. We actually lost votes last week because Keir had taken the tough and right stance on what's happening in Gaza, support for the State of Israel, horror at what happened last October, but calling for a ceasefire. And that wasn't good enough for some people. Well, that's as maybe, as far as I'm concerned. Keir took the right stance, and I don't think there's any indication he's going to soften that stance.
Well, I mean, there is the indication, really. I mean, Rachel Reeves has said that she wants to try to win some people back, and...
Yeah, you win them back through the arguments. You don't win them back by saying that we're going to embrace
their argument.
The
I mean, they've given a list of 8. They've kindly told you what they want, haven't they? And it's 18 demands that include things
and they're not
like...
going to get it.
I mean, I would say it's not that long ago we had the farrago of the Rochdale by-election. So whatever Keir Starmer says... He's also got to make sure that there are proper vetting processes in place, right? So you don't want these people slipping through the net. I mean, I respect the Labour Party as a mainstream political party, even though I disagree with it. But it seems to me there could be a danger that these people get selected for local council, even for Parliament, unless Labour Party's HQ's vetting process is absolutely watertight. And it was found wanting at Rochdale, and I don't know how the Labour Party...
Listen, he's got so many people that he's trying to satisfy, which is why he's got the nickname Flip-Flop. I mean, first of all, he's got all the unions that he needs to satisfy. Then, of course, he's trying to satisfy the Muslim vote. Then, of course, there was the whole thing with the anti-Semitism within the Labour Party, so then he's trying to satisfy them. And then there's even the net zero lobby, so he's trying to get the green thing, because that's why he wants to do net zero. Look, this man literally just sits on the fence and then sort of tips to one side, depending on which side he thinks he's going to... where the balance of power might be.
Do you know what, Nana? That's really not fair.
I know it's true.
He's been utterly ruthless since he's been leader of the Labour Party. He's been utterly ruthless in moving the Labour Party forward, rooting out anti-Semitism, expelling the former leader of the Labour Party.
He was supposedly friends. He was a friend of his, and then suddenly, Jeremy Corbyn.
He wasn't a friend of his. I mean,
there's even a quote where he says that him and Jeremy Corbyn, they're quite good friends. Suddenly, when he realised that Jeremy Corbyn wasn't that popular, he's like distanced himself. I don't know who he is.
Come on.
I mean, that is Keir Starmer.
Come on, you can lay exactly the same accusation at Rishi Sunak, who served alongside Boris Johnson and clearly had no time for him
he's just
whatsoever.
a traitor. He just betrayed Boris. That was a straightforward betrayal. This is somebody... What about the 28 billion for green energy? Flip-flop. Ooh, you can destabilise
the Tories crushed the economy.
No, we're talking about Keir Starmer. Listen, I'm not letting the Tories get away from the mess they've made, but I'm talking about Keir Starmer. He sits on the fence. He's trying to pander to every single sector. And I think this piece, and you called the Daily Mail rubbish or whatever you called it, I think that's ridiculous because the Daily Mail have uncovered some incredible stories.
The Daily Mail has been telling lies about the Labour Party for 100 years.
No, they 100
yes,
years.
They have.
What are you talking
Go back
about?
To the
You just made that up.
No, I haven't. The Zinoviev letter in the 1920s that they manufactured and used against the Labour Party. The Mail's been doing it for 100 years.
This is the truth. He's willing to pander to the He's literally going for any... Whatever says goes, he keeps changing.
What is he doing to pander to the extreme left.
Okay, let's go for his stance on Gaza. Okay, so one minute he was all for Israel and everything else, then his stance started to soften, and now he's got people in his party going from one side to the other.
Hold on, the move towards a ceasefire, the government has supported, the Americans have supported, because although we support the right of Israel to exist, we believe that the response in terms of the disproportionate impact on ordinary Palestinians is not the right way forward.
I imagine if you asked most of the electorate about Keir Starmer, they would struggle to work out what he stands for.
Exactly.
That is a bit of a problem for him. It does seem to me he's trying to kind of win the election by very cautiously carrying the vase over the line.
Lucky for us, at some point soon, there will have to be a manifesto, and then we can see what's in it, won't we? Right, now for something completely different. Our brave... I enjoyed that. I just felt like taking the night off there for a second. Anyway, our brave firefighters put their lives on the line day in, day out to keep us safe. And it was no different in the West Midlands yesterday. Meet 4-month-old Jeremy, who had his head stuck in the garden wall at home for around 30 minutes when his owner called West Midlands Fire Service to help. Firefighters were at the scene of the incident within 4 minutes, and they were able to free Jeremy in a matter of seconds. There he is. After a checkup at the vet, Jeremy was given the all clear. I think a round of applause there. For those brave firefighters. Can I just take a moment to appreciate, so that dog was I think a beagle called Jeremy Beagle.
Very good.
That's what it was, wasn't it? I think that's what it'll be. There you go. Anyway, right, there he is. Look at his little face. Right, coming up, we run through some of the highlights of Monty Panesar's extremely short-lived political career. And next, Eurovision is getting even weirder. I'm a witch! It's the queer entry there from Ireland. Meanwhile, this is Patrick Christys Tonight. We're on GB News.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Rishi Sunak has come out fighting and declared war on what he's called the UK's sick note culture. The country's welfare state bill costs the average taxpayer now £2,000 every single year for every British taxpayer. Astonishing numbers, Catherine, simply mind-bending. 69 billion quid every year now goes on benefits. I paid my tax bill last month. Where did your tax go? I clicked on it. Long-term sickness and benefits is now second only to the NHS on what we spend our tax pound on. This is simply unsustainable.
That's exactly what the Prime Minister said. 69 billion a year on long-term sick and disability benefits, projected to rise to 90 billion by the end of the next Parliament if nothing has done. As he said, it is totally, totally unsustainable. And the message from Rishi Sunak really is, tough love. You're going to take your medicine. It's going to be good for you. You may not like it. Let's have a look at what he had to say earlier.
Everyone with the potential should be supported. And not just to earn, but to contribute and belong. And we must never tolerate barriers that hold people back from making their contribution and from sharing in that sense of self-worth that comes from feeling part of being something bigger than ourselves. And that is why this is a moral mission, and why the value of work is so central to my vision for welfare reform.
Certainly, Rishi Sunak said in the speech, in the period since the pandemic, something has gone wrong. Of course, millions of people had their wages paid by furlough. Now, that was an entirely artificial situation in an exceptional circumstance, but quite a lot of people left the workplace and simply haven't come back.
OK, welcome back. I've got a couple more front pages for you now. Let's start with the Daily Mirror. No royal reunion, worlds apart, they say, but just 2 miles separate King Charles and Prince Harry. Let's go over to the Telegraph. Cameron, EU must be tougher on Russia. Defence spending has to rise if the West wants to tackle Putin and China. That's according to the former Prime Minister, now Foreign Secretary. Interesting story at the bottom of the Telegraph here as well. Cambridge fails to clear protests as Sunak warns of anti-Semitism. So the University of Cambridge will not move pro-Palestine protesters from a college lawn. Rishi Sunak is actually summoning vice-chancellors and we're going to be talking about that a little bit later on. But, yeah, he's summoning vice-chancellors, apparently, to warn them over outright harassment, he says, of Jewish students. Let's get on with the old Prince Harry stuff, though. Nana, I'll start with you. You've got very strong views. You're a massive fan of Prince Harry. But was the king right to snub him, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look... because what he probably have some sort of recording material on him, or there's something that he's going to use for his documentary. I just think that we're kind of fed up with this. I'm fed up of Prince Harry and the whole Meghan Markle debacle. I'd like to see them all make up and be friends, but every time they've got something else to slag off the family. And the king simply cannot risk another episode, especially with his health as well. I mean, you could imagine, I think a lot of the stress can bring on dis-ease. So all of this stress that the royal family have been going through over the last few years, of all of this Harry and Meghan nonsense, I think has played into a lot of their health issues.
The royals, Mark, didn't even send, apparently, a representative to St Paul's Cathedral. They could have sent Andrew.
Well, they could have. That would have gone down a storm, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Look, this is irreparable, surely, isn't it? I'm not much of a royal watcher, but this is irreparable, and I think rightly so. If you're not going to see your son when you're only 2 miles apart and he lives on the other side of the pond, you're not going to make any effort to see him, and I think Harry deserves it. So the king has my full support here, and I don't think this relationship will ever be repaired, let alone the relationship between Harry and his brother.
No, I mean, Bill, the other rumour was apparently that, you know, Harry makes certain demands, apparently, like Camilla can't be in the room, and apparently Camilla likes to be in the room, and that's a problem. So what do you make of this, the king and Harry? I mean, all the noise 2 days ago was that they were definitely meeting, and that's obviously not happened, so...
Do you know what? I actually think it's quite sad. I mean, you know, Harry is clearly aggrieved. The way he's conducted himself leaves somewhat to be desired. But this is a father and son. The father's got cancer. The mother died years ago. I think it's really tragic that they're just totally estranged.
Well, it's his own fault, though, isn't it? I mean, that, you know, like, when Prince Philip is dying, you then go on Oprah, and, you know, they must have known that Prince Philip really wasn't well, and then you spread a load of nonsense about racism, and then later on, 2 years also, in a Tom Bradbury interview after the Queen has passed away, our late Queen, you then go, oh, racism.
Harry and Meghan have made their bed, let them lie in it.
All right,
let them lie in it.
Well, let's park that there and talk about something much more important. It's Eurovision. So let me present you with this year's Eurovision Song Contest. So firstly, we had the UK's representative, didn't we? The Union Jack disliking pro-Palestine activist Ollie Alexander. And now I present to you this year's representative from Ireland.
Do you know what makes me special? I'm a queer. Woo! And I'm a witch!
Right. Yeah, so, Mark, they've got your vote?
Oh, definitely. What did you say? She's a queer. She looked like a rainbow.
She said she's... what makes her special is that she's a queer and a witch.
Wow. Well, definitely got my vote then. I mean, presumably a modicum of musical talent, or is that no longer required?
She does opera.
Oh, a lot of musical talent. Nailed on winner. Yeah. Nailed on winner.
I mean, Eurovision... Look,
it's ridiculous, Eurovision.
Yes, I mean, but that's the point, isn't it? I mean, that stuff probably will do quite well at Eurovision. Bill, I know you're a massive Eurovision fan.
No, I'm really, really not. But my wife and my kids are. Right. And I'm going to be forced to watch it on Saturday night. So, awful. But we're not going to get any votes because... The rest of Europe always votes against us.
Yeah.
Well, also the
So it's about the politics, not the music.
No, it's not. No, it is. It's about the music. I mean...
No, Ukraine won it.
No,
That had
listen.
nothing to do with their song.
Yeah, well,
totally to do with the politics.
But that was sympathy.
Yeah, we would have
But
won
that was sympathy last year for Ukraine, or the year before that. But then we've had Scooch. Do you remember them? They were awful. They were the ones who dressed as flight attendants. That was
Why don't
bad.
we put up a proper
We got
band?
nil points.
We're brilliant at music.
I'm not sure that many proper bands
And this latest guy, I mean, it's just awful. Even though he's like the lead singer
You
for
would have
years
thought
and
we
years.
could do better with our entry, wouldn't
I mean,
you?
we've had likes of David Bowie, Rolling
Cliff
Stones,
Richard.
all that stuff. That are good bands in this country. Instead, we end up with Scooch and this
well,
dude.
it might be a nil point. Anyway, right now, it was only a few days ago that a flight from Bermuda to London had to make an emergency evacuation after a bomb scare. And today, a cargo aircraft made an emergency landing at Istanbul airport. So the landing gear failed on this FedEx flight. Oh, yeah. I think you can,
well done, pilot.
You can almost see the exact moment where that pilot clenches, can't you? Good grief. Yeah, that must have
wets
thought that his
himself.
days were over there. The Boeing plane was on the last leg of its flight from Paris to Istanbul when the pilots realised the front landing gear had failed. Miraculously, no one was injured and the crew safely evacuated, although I imagine that a few parcels were smashed. So there we go. It's time to reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Mark, your Greatest Britain, please.
Honorary Javier Milei, the president of Argentina. Shock therapy being applied to Argentina. Looks like it's working. Inflation way down, but budget's balanced, interest rates cut 3 times in 3 weeks. Keep your eye on this guy. He's not out of the woods yet, but wow, something really exciting is happening in Argentina. I think we could learn from it a bit in the West.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love how completely and utterly bonkers he is. I mean, he's a, kind of leather jacket, chainsaw-wielding bloke with a,
But it's working, Patrick. But seems to be working.
Yeah, it seems to be working. Yeah, lovely. Right, Nana, who's your Greatest Britain?
You said it looks like it's working. He looks like Les Dawson, actually.
It does.
True enough, yeah.
Well, look, my Greatest Britain is Dita Hedman. She's a female British darts player. She forfeited her place. She refused to play against a trans player who's a trans woman who is a biological male. She's absolutely right. And if more women did that, then there would be a separate category for trans women, and rather than putting it in the same category for women.
Can I just say, I believe, Nana, that she's joining us on the show on Friday.
That's right. I'll be talking to her on Friday.
When Nana is standing in for me and
that's
doing
why you
expertly
nominated her.
well on Friday. So good. Well, you're already plugging away. Good. Go on, Bill.
So Jeff Hurst, hero of 66, hat-trick scorer, despite the Russian linesman, fronting a campaign to make the elderly more comfortable with technology. He speaks really movingly about being old and the way that technology can ease your life. And, this is someone who, at a very early age, got fame and relative fortune, and he's still a good, decent bloke doing decent things.
Today's Greatest Britain is Sir Jeff Hurst. Now, we're bang up against it, so just names and quick, please.
Monty Panesar, shortest political career ever, thought NATO was something to do with immigration, didn't know the minimum wage.
Here he is.
This quiz, by the way, Stump the Panesar.
Stump the Panesar.
OK.
Do you know the cost of a prescription in England?
I think it's about £15.
No.
£9.90.
Oh, OK.
What's the population of Ealing?
200,000?
360.
Yeah, there was loads of that, by the way. Right, Nana, go on. Union Jackass.
It's got to be Natalie Elphicke. I mean, she's a bit of an idiot, although she's not here to defend herself, so I'll say, sorry, Natalie. But come on, what are you doing? She's joining. She should have gone to reform if these are her politics.
Yeah,
doesn't make any sense.
Go on, Bill.
Mothin Ali, the Green candidate elected in Leeds last week, who cried, "This is for Gaza." If you look at what he's actually said, immediately after the October the 7th attacks, saying the Palestinians have the right to fight back, his is the type of extremism that really needs
Keep it out of the Labour Party. All right, today's winner of the Union Jackass is Natalie Elphicke. There we go. Right, thank you. Great show this. Thank you all for watching. And I've got something special coming your way at 9 p.m. tomorrow, so I'll see you then.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. It's been another dry and fine day for many of us, and there'll be more in the way of sunshine to come tomorrow, and it should be a warmer day for most of us. However, cloudier skies are starting to approach the northwest as this weather front moves in. Won't make too much progress overnight further elsewhere across the country as high pressure is building in, so it should be a fairly clear and dry night for the bulk of England and Wales. Cloudier skies will affect parts of northern England, Northern Ireland, and in particular much of Scotland, where the rain will turn quite persistent across the northwest overnight. So quite a damp night to come, probably a damp start to the day. But elsewhere, it should be a bright and mild start to the day. Quite widely, temperatures will be in double digits by Thursday morning. Any mist and fog that has formed overnight should clear quite readily. It's most likely across coastal areas across England and Wales, and that will give way to another day of long-lived sunny spells, and it's going to feel warmer in that sunshine than today. And the sunshine should spread up and further north into northwestern areas of Scotland as that weather front pushes north. Highs of 22, 23, possibly 24 degrees across central areas of England on Thursday. Again, there's a risk of mist and fog to start the day on Friday. The sunshine could be a bit hazy first thing, but it should brighten up quite quickly through the day. And I think most areas will see a day of long-lived sunny spells. And once again, it's going to be feeling fairly warm. Long-lived sunshine to come on Saturday. A risk of showers on Sunday, but temperatures are climbing towards 25 or 26 degrees.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. But you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Tubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
Organisations, plural, because there's loads of people doing this. The organisations are charging schools to be part of this odd league table about who's trying to outdo who when it comes to who is more trans-inclusive with the kids than the next person. There's something makes me uneasy about this.
Supposing a child comes home and says, you think, oh, I've done well today. He said, well, how have you done? He said, well, I was #1 painter, or I was #1 reader. No, I wasn't. I was made LGBT champion. This is a 4- and 5-year-old. Look, I can understand this, actually, as we develop into the secondary school. I can understand more debates taking place. I cannot understand why we have to thrust it at young children. And I think if you ask the parents, they'd be hostile to it. And what about the role the teacher has to play in all this?
Society has been one way, the pendulum is swinging the other way, and they're pushing it very far in order to kind of proliferate change. Mm-hmm. And this is probably the toughest period in that evolutionary process, because the LGBTQ plus community is saying that you've got to really rage against the machine to get people to listen. Because put it like this now, even this conversation, the whole country is listening, the whole world is listening. These are the kinds of eyeballs and ears they haven't had before. And there's going to be friction. There's going to be a locking of heads in the process to getting to a point where you establish a new equilibrium where they feel more incorporated. Like I've said, the greatest force of allies that the LGBTQ plus community has always had is heterosexual women. What you're moving towards now is doing things that is beginning to turn them from allies into people who feel that, oh, for you to thrive, I'm being deprived, and that's a problem. When they realise you're alienating allies, they will understand you've got to recalibrate to have that kind of understanding between both parties.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very good evening. You're watching and listening to GB News. I'm Sam Francis. The headlines at exactly 11 o'clock. Another of Rishi Sunak's MPs has defected.